Hi, welcome to my channel. Today we are going to do a homeschool room do-over. This is what I wish my homeschool room had looked like when we first started homeschooling almost 8 years ago. So if you enjoy this type of content, please remember to subscribe and let's get into it. Okay, so I did a kindergarten do-over video recently where I talked about what curriculum, that word is so hard for me to say, that I wish that we had used when we first started homeschooling. And so today I was going to share what I wish our homeschool room had looked like when we first started homeschooling. And this is a little bit harder because obviously when we first started homeschooling, I was homeschooling one child and we had 4. And you know, it also has to deal with space and money and what you want to do long-term, which sometimes changes. So there's a lot of things that can impact this. But this is now what works well for us. And so this is what I wish I had known when I first started homeschooling. So that's kind of what I'm going to share with you, even though it's hard to, you know, have that long-term perspective. And you can, in some ways, maybe think long-term what you want your life to look like or your homeschool life to look like. So maybe I'll help give you a little bit of that perspective if you're newer to homeschool, or even if you've been homeschooling for quite a while, and just give you a little bit of perspective on what you could do, or maybe what will work best, especially if you have a large amount of kids like I do. And so let's start talking about it. All right, so I'm first gonna start by telling you just a little bit about what our homeschool space was like when we first started homeschooling. And then I'll go through a list of things that I wish I had had then that we now have. So we lived in California when we started homeschooling, and we were just there for a year. We didn't know we were only gonna be there for a year when we moved there, but we got a better job, so we moved. And so when we first got there, we weren't planning to homeschool either, but we were renting a home that was a good size for our family. And so then we abruptly had to take our child out of school after his first month of kindergarten, my oldest. And I was like, okay, what are we supposed to do? We didn't really have a good space to homeschool, and you don't always have to have a space, okay? There's lots of ways to homeschool, but I like having things in a spot, and this is their spot. And so when you come into our house, there was these big double doors, the staircase that went upstairs, and it was this is where you could have a sitting area. If people just come to visit, they'd sit right there and not go into the rest of your house. But then it was the dining room, old-fashioned separate dining rooms. And it had this huge chandelier. I'm like, we're not gonna use this. The table's gonna go into the kitchen and stuff. And so I had to take a hook, I think, or something, and lift the chandelier or the big light. It wasn't a chandelier, but the big light, so that we wouldn't hit our heads on it when we walked under it, because it's meant to go over a table, not have people under it. So when we started homeschooling, that was the space I used, was the formal dining room area or whatever, and it didn't look formal. And so when you walk into our house, you'd see this cute little homeschool space. It was we had a little preschool right there. If I can find pictures, I'll insert some. I just can't remember if I have any. That was a long time ago, and I don't know how many pictures I took over the course of that year. And so I had a bookcase. I had a little mini table because my kids were mini at the time. And then I had gotten a little rug that had the ABCs on it. And I think that was basically it. I had some file folders where, I was only storing stuff for one child. So I just put everything in there. It was pretty simple. Again, it was thrown together quickly, and it worked for what we needed at the time. So that was what was good about it. But it also taught me a few things about what I actually liked better long-term. And so let me share those things with you. So the first thing that I would pick to have in my homeschool do-over the whole time is a big table. So if you've been around since I started this channel 5 years ago, that you will know that we used to just have all desks, and my kids, because I was just so worried about them fighting or interrupting each other's work. And so I was like, okay, we'll have separate desks. And that was okay for a while, but really it just became a dumping ground for all their stuff. It was okay, I have my bedroom and I have all this space where I can put all my stuff. And so I was like, okay, we need to change something because this isn't really working for us. Maybe eventually that will need to be what we go back to. I don't really know, but it wasn't working well at the time. So we went from desks to a table. And I know if you have littles, it's easier to have littler tables, which you could still get like a small table to go off to the side. And we've had a few little tables over the years that we've used as well, you know, so they can still participate, or get like a booster chair if you have a toddler so they can sit at the table with you and stuff like that. There's options for that, but I feel like having a really good sized table, if you have the space to do it, or you can use the kitchen table as well, if, you know, and then just clean it all up for your meals and stuff, then it's just so much better. I just love having a big table, and it works well too for when we're not doing specific like homeschool subjects, because my kids can do all their activities. We can put like the paints out, everything, and it's all on this huge table and they can all use it together. I actually wish we had a bigger table. We just don't necessarily have space in this room for a bigger table, but having a table is something that I would go back and tell myself, like, you're gonna want a big table because it's totally worth it. Something that I did sort of have at that time that we still have is storage for schoolwork. It's changed because I was, you know, just one child and not spending tons of money, and so I just did like a little file system of his schoolwork. We now have drawers, like they're just from IKEA, and we've had them since we've moved here, so almost 6 years. And sorry if my kids come bursting in, I think they just got back from the library, so if it gets loud for a second, that's why. But I love having their drawers that we can just put all their schoolwork in. I've mentioned this several times in lots of videos. And so the top 3 drawers is what their schoolwork is in. So they have math, language arts, and then a combination of a few other things with handwriting, or if they have like Spanish work to do or grammar, that will go in the other one. And then the bottom 2 is for their junk. So it used to be all on their desk. Now they don't have specific desks. And so now anything they do want to keep down here, or things to easy access, or other books they like to read, can go in those bottom 2 drawers. So they still have some space, but it's a little bit more controlled and makes me feel better because visually my space isn't as cluttered as it was. And so that's kind of changed a little bit, but it's still the same. Like, I still needed a space to put schoolwork. So I don't know if I would have bought all these drawers. Like, obviously I wouldn't have gone and bought 4 sets. And IKEA usually has the same things for years and years. So if you were worried about that, then maybe you wouldn't go buy as many as you need. But if not, then you could just buy them over time, or have a simpler file system for smaller children, but have some way to organize kids' schoolwork so that you all know where it is and it's easy for them to get to. The next thing is a bookcase. And we did have a bookcase at that time, not the same one that I have now. That bookcase is downstairs. It was like an open shelving bookcase. I think I mostly got it because I needed to also have it where I stored all their schoolwork, right? All the little file containers that I had the little bit of my kindergartner schoolwork in were also on there, and all his pencils or crayons or anything were on top of it and stuff. So I needed something that was a little bit more versatile than just a bookshelf and had space for a few more things. So it was more of an open, like it was open on the ends and things like that. And so that's what we used, and it worked well. And then when we moved into this room, I did not have the same bookshelf I have now because we have grown again with books. So this might be something that over time you put more books on it, or if you can buy or see a cheap bookcase that's bigger from the beginning, you might want to buy it because you'll fill it up. Believe me, you will fill it up, and you'll be figuring out where you can put more books, because that's just what happens. Okay, we just love books, especially over here. And so having a bookcase that works for that, and this one that I have in this room also has space on the top. It's not too tall where I can put like a whole bunch of either calendars or our globe or pencils or things like that, or even my like pens and pencils that I don't want my kids to get into. I put those up a little bit higher. The next thing is some sort of filing system just for schoolwork in general. I actually don't use this too much right now. So this is a file cabinet behind me. Let's see if I can point to it in this way. I don't know. All of it looks weird. Anyway, so this is a filing cabinet behind me. And again, I used to use just those they're like little boxes or whatever that are open on the top, and you can just put folders in them. And so when we moved here, I got a bigger file cabinet because I knew we needed it, but I also wanted it to look nice, not like a file cabinet. And so That's why I got this one, and then I could still like put stuff on top it, or it has books on it as well that we sometimes will read. And this is good because it's like it has most of my like preschool or early like school year stuff in it. But you know, all the stuff that I laminated with all the ABCs over time, or any unit studies, so like for Christmas or stickers or things like that, I just keep it all in here filed. And so then when I'm looking for stickers or maybe ideas for Christmas, do I have leftovers from last year? I don't know. And so I look through there and find it for any of the holidays, or maybe some crafts that I've left in there. And so, and even some scripture or like church stuff, I will file in there. And so it's been really helpful that way to keep track of stuff. And again, I use it a little bit more when I'm doing more preschool type ages, because that's what's in there. You know, I don't want to throw all that stuff away and have to redo it, but I also need some place for it to go. And you know, those younger years require a little bit more like hands-on stuff, which takes up a little bit more space, and it's just a little bit harder to know the best ways to store it. So like a lot of the mats are down here for ABCs and stuff for them to do Play-Doh on them, or they could fill them with manipulatives or things like that. So having some sort of filing cabinet system. So maybe if you're gonna start out, you wanna get something a little bit more like this. If you have more kids, it will fill up, or you could start with something smaller if you just don't think you're gonna use it, but I still think it's very helpful. The next thing is a calendar, and we did sort of have a calendar. I bought the like Melissa and Doug calendar and I do it with my first child. I don't feel like I ever really used it super well after him. Like we would change it a little bit when we moved here, but I feel like I wasn't as good at it. So I was better at it when I was just working more one-on-one with a child and not when I was trying to do all my kids. And so that's a good option though. You know, it's you can probably still find them on Amazon, and it opens up and you can put what the weather's like and the date and all those types of things. And it's really great. But now we have different calendar, which is up here behind me. I've had a few different calendars over the years, and this one is a little bit more for like holidays and stuff like that, and just for my kids to have a calendar to look at. And then it has like their chores and things on it. So I just have one of the like, what are these called? I don't know, boards that you can put push pins in, cork boards, that's probably it. And so that's what I have up there, and I just put the calendar on it, and then I can keep their chores and stuff. But then I also recently got another calendar that I could write on what's happening in our family, as far as what's like if we're doing sports stuff, or if we have piano lessons or other music lessons, or when I'm going to the chiropractor or getting a massage, or you know, all those types of things that I'll look at for the month and kind of fill it in. And it doesn't always have everything, but at least my kids kind of have an idea of what's going on. So over the years, they've kind of adapted again as they've gotten older and had to change. But having some sort of calendar system at the beginning, I feel like is helpful, and something maybe you could just invest in something bigger to begin with, because I feel like it's just a lot easier to work with. I wasn't good at doing all the things on the Melissa and Doug one, but if you like that kind of stuff, that might be a good option for you. And the only like new thing that I would recommend that we didn't have really in any sort of form is a whiteboard. I had small whiteboards. I don't know if I had them when we first started homeschooling, and I still have small whiteboards if my kids need to pull out a whiteboard and do some work. But having a big whiteboard on the wall has been so helpful. We actually haven't used it as much since I've had babies, because the space is a little bit harder for the babies. There's more stuff they can get into back here. And so I haven't used it nearly as much as I was, but I loved being able to write on it for science, or if my kids were having struggles with knowing how to spell a word, I could, for group work, just write all the words up on the board. And it was very, very easy for them to see. But I love having a whiteboard for that. Like, I would recommend getting some sort of big whiteboard that long-term is going to be useful for you, you know, not just something teeny, but something big that you can use. And it's also really fun for the kids to draw on and things like that. So it keeps them occupied in the afternoons or whatever. It also is magnetic. It's not the strongest magnetic board, but you can put things up there that are magnetic and, you know, use it that way also. So I'm sitting here getting ready to like close this video and realize another thing that I did not have that I really, really love. And this is kind of a spoiled thing because we ended up getting a house that had this room off the kitchen that was supposed to be a hair salon. And so it has a closet, and not just a little closet, it's a big closet. It's right behind me. And I didn't have really good places to store stuff that I didn't want my kids to get into in our first house. And so I feel like having some sort of storage system for things is really, really great. So this closet has like all of our games. It has extra manipulatives and stuff. It has some books that we just really use for unit study and don't have my kids get into all the time. It has some of our art supplies and like tons and tons of different things. So finding something, like some way to storage it, might have to just be like a separate cabinet that you buy or whatever, is really, really helpful, because then everything is still in one spot and you know where it is, you can get it when you need it, and it's not all over the house, which is how I kind of felt like it was. Like, oh, hold on, I have to go get this because we're gonna use it. And I have to prep stuff here, but all the other stuff's over here. And it was just kind of awkward because I felt like I was divided between 2 spaces and sometimes 3. And so knowing where everything is and having it kind of localized to the same spot is super helpful. And because we have this closet, I'm able to do that so much easier. All right, I think now we are ready to close this video. If I could have from the beginning what I have now, like that would have been perfection. I feel like obviously hindsight is 2020. And so knowing that is really hard, but I really love the way everything's set up now. I feel like it's really functional for our family. So comment down below some things that you really like for your homeschool space or your homeschool room or whatever space you use to do homeschool. I would love to hear. And remember to give this video a thumbs up, and I will see you next time.